This is the Google Pixel Fold, and I have to say, I have not been this excited to use a folding phone since the Galaxy Z Fold 2. Even then, I had to eventually get rid of that phone because it just ended up not being the kind of phone I thought it was gonna be. But I have to say, in using this Pixel Fold, I wanna talk about it, and let me just say, I very much like using this phone. So the first thing I wanna do is talk about the design, and man, is this just a beautiful phone. On the front here, you have a 5.8-inch display with a resolution of 1080 by 2092. You also have 120 Hertz and a peak brightness of 1550. It's shorter on top, it's wider, so it makes it feel like you're using a regular smartphone nowadays, and that is exactly the kind of feeling I wanted to have when I use the front display. Now on the front as well, you also have a 9.5 megapixel camera, which to me, it does just fine. It does exactly what I needed to do. And then around the phone, you have steel. Now I have to say, because of the steel, this is such a fingerprint magnet that I am just constantly like having to wipe down my phone, or I have to get a cloth with me to make sure I remove as much as I can. So if you're someone that doesn't like fingerprints on their phone, I really recommend having like a micro cloth, those little fiber cloths for glasses with you, or put a case on the phone so that way you can just cover it. On the bottom, we do have a USB-C, I believe it's 3.2, and then on the side here, you have the volume rockers as well as the power button that seconds as a fingerprint scanner, which I have to say, I've always been a fan of fingerprint scanners, so I'm glad that this has one. And on the back, you do have this camera hump here, and then I actually like this little accent touch that they did. They put a little G there. That's a really nice branding thing. It's very minimal, but I like it. Also, listen very carefully because I'm gonna shake this. There's one thing I noticed, which I'm pretty sure it's just the cameras itself. Maybe it's one of the sensors or like the OIS in action. But just know if you use the phone, you might hear an occasional rattle. And here, you can take a listen right here. That hasn't ruined any experience I have with the phone, but it's definitely something I noticed. So just keep that in mind. Now, another thing about the design I want to talk about is the actual weight of the phone itself. So this weighs 283 grams. And if you're not used to having a little bit of a chunkier phone, you're gonna feel the weight difference. Like, I'm coming from an iPhone 13 mini. Part of why I love that phone is just how light that phone is. And when I put this in my pocket, just because of some of the weight loss that I've been going through, my shorts are definitely sagging a little more. And the fact that my phone here, when it goes in my pocket, it actually brings out my shorts ever so slightly more. But now here's the other thing too. Because of the weight, I am just so much more aware of my phone that it makes me also just more cautious of it. Now, the fact that this is a very expensive phone, we're looking at $1,800 here, I don't want to drop it in general, nor would I want to drop any of my phones. Just be careful, be a little more mindful about this. You definitely don't want to drop this because that's going to be a very expensive mistake. All right, next thing about the design we're going to go to now finally is that beautiful inner display. Here we have a 7.6-inch display with a flexible OLED screen. You're looking at 120 Hertz with a resolution of 2208 by 1840. And listen, I also know as part of the design, we're gonna at some point talk about these bezels. I gotta be honest, in the whole time I've had this phone, the bezels have not once bothered me at all. I just get immersed in what I'm doing, whether that's reading, watching something, or actually using the phone for something I need to do. The bezels have never once come into a factor where it bothered me. If anything, I actually like having a bit of bezel because that way when I grip the phone, I really like that my thumb can rest on something without touching the display. And I know that phones have like those accidental touch display features where it won't register that touch, but at the same time, I just like having a physical section where my thumb can rest and I don't have to worry about that. Now, can they make the bezels smaller in the next generation? I mean, yes, I do hope so, but they don't need to be absolutely thin. At least not for me and my preference, I don't mind these at all. Now next, we do have an 8 megapixel camera that is living in the bezel, which for me, in using the camera at the times I have, it hasn't been a problem, but everyone's gonna have their own picture preferences. But I think it's neat that we have an actual camera and not a under display camera. Now, something about the inner display and the way it works, at least at the time of this recording, is if you notice my phone when it's closed, I have like my default front screen. I swipe to the right, and then you're gonna have my next screen that comes up, right? Now, when I open the Fold though, and you use the bigger display, the layout is exactly the same. So now on the left side would be the way that my first screen would look when I have the phone closed, and the right side is the second screen. it's just weird to me that we don't have that customization to kind of change the inner display layout as opposed to the way the outer display would be. But I want the option to be able to customize it to my heart's content, because that's the whole point of Android, right? Now, of course, we can't talk about the big display in the phone without talking about the elephant in the room, which is the elephant in the middle of this phone, the Crease. See, the thing with the Crease is it has a couple of quirks with it that when you kind of learn how to live with it, it doesn't bother you too much. And to be honest, it's never really bothered me a lot. There are a couple things I want to note though and share with you guys, because I want to give you as much information as possible in case you're hesitant about owning a phone that has this. So first, let me say this. The Crease is going to be something that you're either someone that absolutely hates it, someone that doesn't mind it, or someone that can learn to adjust and live with it. And I've learned to adjust and live with it. So if I go to frame.io, you'll see that I do indeed have more of the video to watch. It'll be bigger that I can view it on. When I look at the comments are bigger. So it just gives me a more pleasant experience. But here's the thing, if you notice that on Frame, the background, most of this is in dark mode. And of course that is also my preference as well. But that is actually one of those quirks about this fold, because in the center, in the Crease, I can see the warping going on, and I think it's because when you use something in dark mode, it just makes that crease stick out a lot more. For example, if I go to my Books app, because I do like to read a lot, if I use a dark background with white text when I'm reading, I can see kind of like the warp that happens with the letters in the center. It doesn't bother me too much, but it can definitely be something that my eyes just can't unsee. Now, there is a trick to that though. If I were to go to the top right and switch it from a dark mode page to a brighter page, I swear this crease nearly disappears, and I think it's because the brighter backgrounds you have, the best you have of hiding that crease. And it just increases the reading experience on this device. Now, speaking of reading experiences, if you read mangas, you are going to absolutely love doing that on this device. So you know when you open a book, you have the page on the right, page on the left, and then you have the crease in the center. Now, I use the app X Comics to read, and when I read a manga, because the pages are already white and bright, and it's actually laid out the way it would be like in a regular book, and due to the size of this phone, it makes it to just the best reading experience I think I've ever had. And then that got me wondering, am I able to read books on the Books app the way I would normally read a book in real life? So I went to go check, and not every book can do this, but if I go to Show Your Work by Austin Kleon, if I go to the top right and switch it from like the flowing text to original pages, I believe it's called, then it's gonna lay it out like the regular book, but because it's not properly scaled and it's not properly fit and updated and optimized essentially for this device, it's not the same experience as reading a manga that is already laid out in that manner. So if there's an update that can make that possible, the reading experience on these devices will just get even better. So I give the reading on this phone a 7 out of 10, and definitely a 9 out of 10 if you're reading mangas. Like I want to read more because of this device, like straight up. I haven't read as much lately, but ever since I got this phone, my reading has just skyrocketed. Now, aside from reading, other use cases I have would be, you know, your multitasking, keeping one app on one side, one app on the other. I actually found a use case for this if you guys are still wondering what you could do or use this for. Let's say that you order DoorDash and you want to track your food while using your phone. Just keep DoorDash open on one side of the phone and have your Twitter or X, whatever you want to call it, on the left side, and then that way you can actually browse Twitter while being able to keep an eye on your food. Like, that's a small use case, but I've actually done that a lot more now, and I never thought that that would be a use case I would have. But here's the thing, aside from some work apps and of course tracking like food and stuff, there hasn't been too many more use cases I have for the big display aside from reading, browsing the internet, checking my work apps. And the reason for that is going to come down to the biggest thing that I feel really holds these devices back still, and that's got to be optimization. See, optimization really is the name of the game for these devices, because if the apps don't properly run on this device, it's just gonna look jarring. There's a lot of apps, for example, like Instagram, that just doesn't look good. And even though Google did have an idea where you can double tap on either side of the screen to push the app there, it still doesn't solve the fact that there's just a big blank section on your device. You might as well just use it closed. Now, one free tip for Google, if you are happen to be watching this, is if you're gonna give me a blank section on the right side of the device, make it so that I can use that blink section as a trackpad and just scroll through Instagram or Twitter or whatever. So that way my other thumb can just kind of stay away from the device. So that way I'm not blocking any of the contents that I'm looking. But again, if we're gonna do that, you might as well use it closed. But optimization is really gonna come down to the developers of the apps, and let's be real, a lot of times they don't want to optimize apps, especially on devices like this anytime soon, because it's just not that big of a market yet, or at least enough incentive for them to want to do it. But I do think if we want to have these phones become bigger and better in the future, app optimization is gonna have to be a big thing that gets pushed onto these. At the end of the day, I still very much enjoy using what I use, but there's definitely work to be done. And now with optimization, it's gonna come down to battery life. Now, this topic is a little tricky because everyone's use cases are gonna be different, but let me just give like a very standard and broad number here. I have read and I've seen that a lot of people have claimed that they get around at most like 4.5 hours of screen on time. And I found that to be true to some extent. But I am someone that does not mind adjusting the way I use my phones, given the battery life, of course, and this phone is no exception. So I found a way to kind of push the battery life just a little bit more, because there have been times where I've gotten 5 hours of screen on time. Now, it's gonna be tricky, but let me give you guys a rundown on how I use my phone and how the battery usually lasts me. So with this phone, I'm usually up by 5:50 a.m. so that way I can go to the gym at, let's say, 6 or 6:15. I'm at 100% at that time, and from the time that I'm at the gym until I'm done in an hour, what I normally do, it would be about half an hour of Spotify, so me just Bluetooth listening to music, and then after that, I'll sometimes dip into listening to a YouTube video in the background, or I'll actually turn on the display and watch it until my time is done. Now, after the gym, I am usually at 95 to 94%. So for 1 hour of a lot of constant background playback, that's really good for me. After that, I get ready to go to the studio, which is here. And in that, it's another roughly 30 minutes, depending if I go get a drink at the coffee shop or not. It's usually about 30 minutes that I'm still listening to Spotify again in the background. And then by the time I get to the studio, I'm at 88%. Now, from 88%, which is around 8:15 a.m., sometimes 8:30, I have to now think I need this phone to last me through my workday. Because to me, that is the biggest part of my days typically is my job, and I don't want my phone to die while I'm at work. But here's the thing, I rarely use my phone during work anyway, because most of what I do is on the computer. I do answer text messages, I answer all the phone calls I have. Sometimes I'm even on the phone for like an hour plus on my phone. And it's because of the fact though that I am just aware that I don't need to use my phone, I do everything on the computer. Standby time is the main thing for me in this device. And the standby time has been fine. There was a time where I even got out of work, and yes, it was a light day of using the phone of course, but I got out of work and I still had 77% of battery. And it's those things that I keep in mind, because if I know that I'm using my phone a lot during work, I have a charger here if I need it. But I also know if I have somewhere to be after work, and let's say I'm taking photos, I'm recording, then I also just top it up an extra like 20-30% before I go to the next thing I have to do. So this is what I say when I say battery life for me hasn't been bad. It's because it lasts me through the important parts of my day, which is what I think a lot of us would really want our phone to do. And even though we want to charge our phones only one time a day, which I personally would like as well, I'm not afraid to just give it an extra 10-15% when the time comes. Now, there's 4 things I did to this phone that I tweaked it to make the battery last as well as it has for me personally. I know a lot of you guys are not gonna like a lot of my recommendations here, especially because I agree, if you're paying $1,800, you wanna use everything this phone has to offer, but I'm willing to make some adjustments. So here are 4 things I do to make sure that this battery life lasts me as long as it can. First thing I do, which is probably the worst offense, I turn off smooth display, meaning I don't use 120 Hz, I stick with 60 Hz on this phone. This might be a bit of a hot take, I don't mind using 60 Hz on cell phones. Depending on the tablet, of course, 60 Hz can look weird, but I have gotten so used to it at this point, even like my work monitor is 60 Hz, it doesn't bother me. And that alone saves me a lot of battery. The second thing I do is turn off 5G and I only use LTE. That alone saves a good amount of battery as well, because we're just not looking for those 5G signals, which to me, it's not even worth it. Third thing I do is I dark mode as many things as I can. Of course, when I'm reading and stuff, I do use the white backgrounds to hide the crease, but I am a dark mode guy anyway, so no changes for me. And the last thing I do, which isn't that big of like a battery saver, but I turn off auto brightness and just manually do it myself. Normally because I feel like phones like to be brighter than I need them to be, and I'd rather just comfortably sit at 50 to at most 70% of max brightness unless I'm outside, and then that's where I'll crank it up. I don't know if I mentioned it, but viewing this phone outside is great. I have no problems with that at all. One weird thing that happened that I feel is worth sharing in case you experienced this is there was a day where I was just watching YouTube on TV and I felt my phone getting hot. Now I'm not talking about warming up through regular usage, I'm talking about hot. And I checked the battery and I saw that the Pixel launcher, which normally throughout my days only uses like 3% of my battery, was eating 20%. I don't know what was going on. That got me scared. I thought it's like something just drastically happened to the phone without me being aware of it. But I just restarted the phone. I haven't had that issue since. But in case you experience a weird bug like that, I recommend restarting the phone and seeing if that helps. But hopefully there's an update in the future that kind of helps with that issue. Now, when it comes to the cameras, when it comes to performance on the phone, everyone's usage is going to be different and everyone's expectations are going to be different. But let me say this, the G2 chip that's in here, it isn't as powerful as other chips out there like Apple's, for example, on their iPhones. But for me and what I do, it's more than enough. I've never ran into performance issues. I have had the phone warm up a little bit, but to be fair, it's a thin phone. The cooling isn't as good. Maybe next year it can just be slightly thicker to house a better cooling solution for this. But I don't experience drop frames, I don't experience stutters. Whenever I play a game, which the only games I play are basically Pokemon Go and TFT, I just don't have issues with it. This thing runs so buttery smooth that even though I know I could get better power for my money if I were to get another phone, I actually really like where this is sitting. I do wish it was still more powerful though, but maybe next year with the G3 chip, you'll get a better bang for your buck in terms of performance. And same with the cameras. I'm not someone that is constantly taking photos or videos with my phone. If I do, to be very frank, I prefer using an iPhone for the video capturing that I do. For my videos, even here on my channel, a lot of my behind the scenes videos that I make, my vlogs, those are made on an iPhone. Could the cameras be better, especially for the price? Yes. But are they bad for where they're at right now? No. I've just seen better for more expensive phones, but this is still fine. I actually really like it. And I'm actually more inclined to take photos with this phone even than my iPhone. Like straight up, I like this a lot. So who should be buying this phone? Who is this phone even for? To me, these are definitely phones for the enthusiasts, for people that have the kind of money lying around to spend this much, or who can get a good deal through their phone carrier so you can get it discounted. I think like you get $1,000 from Verizon off, so you can get it like half price or something. I don't know how their thing works for that. If you're a power user, you want the best of the best. You're getting the best from Pixel, of course, but you're not getting the best foldable from them yet. So I would say this phone, for the money, it is hard to justify a lot of the choices they made, but I understand why they made them. So if you're an enthusiast, go for it. If you understand the flaws that these phones have, go for it. If you're someone that is willing to tweak a little bit with how they use the phone so they can have a foldable, go for it. If you're someone that's very active, you're rock climbing, unless you have cases on this bad boy. If you're someone that is near sand a lot because you don't want sand to come in. Like, I just don't think this is like an outdoor activities kind of person's phone unless you're putting it in a book bag or a bag anytime you're near some extreme environments. But if you're an enthusiast, if you're someone that loves tech, is excited about foldables, likes Pixel, and is willing to understand that the price of entry for this is expensive, but you're also helping the next generation get made, I would say do it. Like, I'm serious. I come from an iPhone. I still have my Apple Watch and I still plan to use it, but I'm going to be using this phone. I really, really like this phone. So if you go and buy this phone, I know you're gonna like it. You're gonna notice the quirks I mentioned. You're gonna find your own issues with it. But I am very happy with this, and I think if you already are interested in this phone, chances are you're going to be happy with it as well. If you have any questions or want to see a follow-up video to this, leave it down in the comment section so I'm aware of it. But until then, feel free to watch any one of my extra videos at the end screen card here. And then down in the description, you can follow me on Twitter if you'd like. That's the only social media site that I'm very active on. But if not, I should see you guys in the next one. Take care.